This week on Car File, a selection of the best cars around. Luxury, opulence, the kind of car if you've got a bit of money.
One wonders what life must have been like in the 20s and 30s if you were one of the famous Bentley boys. Dashing men who lived life to the full, drank hard and raced hard at famous circuits all over Europe. Right through the decades, the factory at Crewe have produced some truly memorable cars. How about this one? A 1956 Bentley Continental S1 Fastback, which, if you're interested, is for sale at this dealership in Cheshire. Price around £45,000. It's absolutely immaculate. It stands the test of time even today. But if you want a Bentley today, the car to buy is this, the new Arnage Saloon. But is it good enough to take on the world's best and transport Bentley into the new millennium? Now, I've never driven a car before that costs as much money as this one does, and to be honest, it's rather a daunting thought. When you think that the average house price across the UK is about £75,000 and that this car costs twice as much, it's a worrying thought maybe. However, the days of Bentley buyers being sat back there lapping it up in the rear, thankfully, are generally over. What's the point in buying this sort of car and not being able to enjoy it? You want to be sat here at the heart of things, revelling in all that power from a BMW engine. The shame of it. The Arnage and the Silver Seraph, both launched in 1998, were styled by Graham Hull. It's an all-new body shell over the previous Rolls and Bentley models, with greater torsional rigidity, giving improved aerodynamics and fuel efficiency. It has a very sleek appearance, certainly when compared to the previous model anyway, with flowing lines. It sits fairly low on the road and has a drag coefficient of 0.37, a 12% improvement on the old model. The name Arnage, by the way, comes from the famous Le Mans circuit. It's one of the corners there. And the heritage with Le Mans continues with the name Arnage, as well as with the new concept car launched at Geneva, the Hunandiers, which, well, quite frankly, received a very mixed reception on press day. People were not quite so sure about it. Maybe Dr. Piesch and his gang have misjudged badly what a Bentley buyer wants to see in the future. A manual gearbox, a mid-engined car. Not so sure about that. The Arnage gets an all-new suspension, mounted on steel subframes with an independent double wishbone configuration, front and rear, which improves the ride and the handling. This is no wallowy large saloon, that's for sure. Now, the Arnage and the Silver Seraph are basically the same shape, apart from with the Bentley you get a few extra spoilers. And it's a shape that has grown on me tremendously since I've had this car. And of course, the Bentley has this wonderful, wonderful, distinctive mesh grille. But under the bonnet is what you want to know about. And this is where you get the 4.5 litre all aluminium engine from BMW. Now, it's basically the same engine that's in the 740. Thank goodness it's been worked on, it's been modified. It now has twin water-cooled turbochargers. It pumps out 350 brake horsepower, 413 pounds-foot of torque, which makes it very, very fast. It's just a shame that when you flip the lid and you look at the engine, it's not a hand-built engine anymore. Now, as you would expect, stepping into a Bentley is an experience all in itself, with this gorgeous, finest Connolly leather, the wood, the chrome, the thick Wilton carpets that your feet almost get lost in. It's like spending a day in a gentleman's club. However, would you expect to find cup holders from a 7 Series in a Bentley? No, not really. Would you expect to find switchgear from a 7 Series in a Bentley? Again, no. And it's perhaps these controls for the climate system which disappoint the most. However, you get used to them. The rest of the car is just magnificent. These gorgeous cream dials, the chrome, the wood, the leather. It makes you realise the amount of work that's gone into producing this car. And what about back here? Well, as you would imagine, it's very, very comfortable. However, there's not the room that there used to be in the rear of a Bentley. Anyone over about 6 foot tall might have a bit of difficulty getting themselves comfortable. Your knees tend to be fairly high and you sit quite low. Apart from that, there are wonderful, wonderful electric seats here. And as for this, gorgeous picnic tables, ideal for strawberries and cream at Henley this summer. There are a lot worse places to be than in the back of here, that's for sure. A big fat cigar and a dry martini would go down very well right now.
It will be very interesting to see how Volkswagen develop the Bentley brand, as they will certainly have to do after paying so much money for it. The range currently consists of the Arnage and 4 variants of the Coupe, the soft-top Azure, Continental R and T, and the newest arrival, the Sadanka SC, which you may have seen Ken Gibson driving recently on Motor Week. Baby Bentleys, updated coupes, who knows what we'll see in the future.
Power to the rear wheels of the Arnage is handled superbly by a 5-speed automatic ZF gearbox, which has 2 modes, normal and sport. If you fancy a blast down country lanes, well, flick it into sport mode, and the ultra-fast kickdown will have you rocketing towards the horizon, so fast you'll hardly have time to catch your breath. It really is an astonishingly quick car. The growl you hear from the engine under normal driving becomes a full-blooded roar once you open the Arnage up. The throttle is light and crisp. There's no discernible turbo lag. One criticism of the car, though, is the amount of wind noise that comes into the cabin when cruising on the motorway, particularly here around the A-pillars. The brakes are superb thanks to a new power boost brake system with 4-channel ABS and micro alloy discs too. The ride is slightly firm, the handling is good, and the steering just nicely weighted to give the right amount of feedback.
0 to 60 comes up in 6.2 seconds, which for such a big car is still astonishing. Top speed has been limited to a mere 150 miles per hour. Gone are the days when the company wouldn't release power and performance figures, describing them as merely adequate. Now they want to sing them from the rooftops. The old phrase about if you have to ask how many miles to the gallon it does, you can't afford it, well, I suppose it's still relevant. But even if I could afford this car, I'd like to know how many miles it does do to a gallon or a tank. Are you sitting down? Well, 12 miles per gallon urban, 16 combined, with a tank that takes nearly 21 gallons. It'll set you back well over £60 to fill up. Still, most Bentley owners have about 4 other cars in the garage, so I guess they can afford it.
Despite its huge size, it's surprisingly easy to hustle this car fast down country lanes. The grip and the cornering are tremendous and the power just keeps coming and coming. Mind you, this is one car I wouldn't like to take down a narrow country lane. Meet something coming the other way, and it's doubtful if the driver will doff his cap and offer to move out of the way for you, governor. So, is the Arnage a good car? Certainly. Is it a great car? Possibly. Is it a car that's worthy of the Bentley mark? Absolutely. But can you say it's worth the £145,000 purchase price that this will cost you? Well, that has to be subjective. If this is just another car in your fleet, well, you probably hardly notice the dent in your bank balance it would take to buy this car. A new S-Class is half the price of the Arnage, for instance. You could probably buy a row of terraced houses in some parts of the country, but an ocean-going yacht is considerably more expensive than this. And that's the sort of context that you have to take with cars that cost this amount of money. Is it to be another rare masterpiece to hang on the walls of your mansion, or a Bentley Arnage? There's only one answer for me, and it's this. It may not be the best car in the world, but it certainly beats staring at a picture.
Now, we may share the same language as our friends across the Atlantic, and we've certainly inherited their love of fast food, but one thing we can't quite agree on is our taste in cars. Why? Well, just take a look at their roads and then remind yourself what ours are like. Yes, in Europe we love nothing better than to chuck a car around a set of thrilling bends. whilst in the States you have roads that stretch to infinity in a very straight line. And let's not forget the population with a taste for luxury on wheels. And those are the points you need to bear in mind when you weigh up the Cadillac Seville. Now, this is America's best-selling luxury car, and it's recently been introduced to our shores in, I might add, right-hand drive form. The very name Cadillac, of course, conjures up images of those huge fin-tailed gas guzzlers from the late 50s, all American cars. And the Cadillac Seville is without doubt an all-American affair. So GM have smoothed the edges off the Seville and got rid of the chrome overload. In fact, if it wasn't for the grille here on the front, you could almost be in, dare I say it, the Saab 9.5. But none of that can take away from the fact that this is an American car. You can tell the minute you get inside. There are loads of cubby holes and compartments everywhere. There are just dozens and dozens of fiddly little switches, and the wood and the leather just add to that old colonial ambience. But those are just the more obvious touches. Let me take you through some of my favourites. I mean, have you ever seen a waste paper basket on a car? And if you're motoring through one of those dodgy American cities, then you'll like the way that the doors lock automatically when you go from park to drive. And what about the seats that make the Seville resemble a sofa on wheels? Not only do they electrically adjust in every way imaginable, but they also work out your weight and your size, and then inflate or deflate little pockets of air inside the seats to make it even more comfortable. What will they think of next? This is the STS model, and it's the only one available in the UK. And although it's supposed to have a harder, more European feel, Cadillac simply haven't gone far enough with it. Or maybe that's that they just couldn't go far enough with it. In fact, it's only when you get the Cadillac onto familiar territory, a long stretch of road, that it really starts to feel at home. And then you can relax, slip it into cruise control, and sink into your electrically adjustable seats. Oh yes, the Cadillac Seville can cruise in much the same way that the QE2 cruises. You simply drift along in air-conditioned opulence and splendour, your every whim catered for. Unless you're a passenger sitting in the back. Now, I really don't think there's enough room back here for a car in this class. Now, it's okay for me, but I am quite small. But you get a couple of large blokes in the back here and they'd have no chance. So I've got a tip for you if you're planning on buying this Seville and being chauffeur driven. Make sure you hire a very small chauffeur. That way it'll give you plenty of room in the back. Drive on please, small chauffeur. It's an absolutely huge North Star V8, 32 valves, 4.6 litres, producing 301 brake horsepower. Obviously an engine designed for a country where petrol costs just a couple of cents a gallon. Now, it may seem like I'm being picky, but I reckon there are plenty of far better designed, more practical and definitely more stylish cars that I could buy for my 40 grand. You heard me right, I did say 40 grand. Somehow I don't think that the German giants will be losing much sleep over this competitor.
In part 2 of Car File after the break, we continue our theme of luxury and opulence, and Ken Gibson returns to his modest childhood roots, this time driving a Bentley.
Now, arriving at 5-star luxury hotels is all about arriving in style. You might think that a helicopter pad in a helicopter could be the perfect way. I don't think so. If you give me the chance, I reckon I'd make a bigger impression turning up at the doors in my Bentley. £255,000. That's what it would cost you to buy this Bentley Sadanka Coupe. But this is a Bentley with a none too subtle difference. Bentley say they wanted to make the ultimate statement when they made this car, and that's why we've got this hideous burnt orange metallic colour. 50% of these cars are going to go to the Sunshine States of America, and you've guessed it, the old Yanks demand something very, very extrovert. But personally, I think the original Bentley boys will be turning in their grave. So what's it like driving a mobile fortune? First impression is of absolute comfort. It's like sitting on a large throne. It also feels frighteningly powerful. That's probably because it's got a 6.7 litre monster engine with 400 brake horsepower that will propel this 2.5 tons worth of metal from 0 to 60 in a frightening 6.1 seconds. Should you be allowed, it would also take you rapidly to 155 miles an hour. I was really apprehensive before I got in. I mean, 250,000, that's £250,000. To be honest, I was more than apprehensive. I was bloody scared. I mean, what if somebody bumps into you? But the fact is, everybody is paying homage to you. There's no navigation system. I mean, you even get one of those in a Vauxhall Vectra. That's optional in the Bentley, though. And I wouldn't have minded having a TV screen. You get one of those in a BMW 5 Series. Well, there's a herd of cows being sacrificed for the leather for this, and by God, though, it was worth it, because comfort-wise, I am just sitting in seventh heaven here. It is so relaxing. The only danger is you can imagine yourself nodding off. And as for the back, well, to be quite frank, there is no room at all, or very little. This is definitely not the Bentley you want to be chauffeured in. This is a driver's car, and this is the place you want to be. You don't feel too cramped, though, because you've got the ultimate sunroof. 2 removable panels, second sunroof for the people sitting in the back, and this Bentley converts, at the touch of a button, into a soft-top sports car. Incredible thing about Bentley owners is, apparently, the average one owns between 6 and 10 cars, including at least 2 supercars like a Ferrari and a Porsche 911. It's a hard life being a Bentley owner. Behind all the typically traditional Bentley wood and all the rest of it, though, this Bentley is an absolute aristocratic hooligan. Not surprisingly, you don't see too many Bentley owners doing the shopping, using them for the day-to-day things. So, anyway, here we are. Let's just park up. No wonder they don't like parking Bentleys at supermarkets. I've just found out why. At nearly 18 foot, they're a nightmare. You do realise, of course, that the Bentley badge is now actually no longer a Bentley, because, of course, it's owned by Volkswagen. Good news is that they intend, they say, keeping the badge and everything else about the car just so. What it'll mean, though, is they're going to invest £500 million of their money on a new model range of Bentleys. So that's it. I've had my amazing day as king of the road, but let's get back to reality. This car is still £255,000. For that, you could buy 6 people's homes here. So, do I want to be Mr. Sensible? I don't think so. What I really want is to keep my motoring fantasy.
Okay, so I'm not the next James Bond, but I'm still faced with a very important mission. If you've got 35 grand to spend on a car, it can be a pretty tough decision, and you only get one chance to get it right. But beware, because what starts out as a 35 grand car can soon end up costing you dear. If you fancy driving a Mercedes and you want some flash gadgets, like a stereo or air conditioning, it's all going onto the price. Before you know it, your budget's spiralling, you're cornered by the smooth-talking salesman and the bank manager's homing in. Yes, it's a rare thing to find a luxury car with all those little extras that you'd expect included in the price. And that's always been the big attraction of the Lexus.
This is the latest Lexus, the new GS300. There are 2 models in the range, both featuring 3-litre engines. The only difference is the trim. This is the slightly more luxurious SE model, and it'll cost you £34,000 on the road. But in this case, you part with your cash and you get a handsome list of equipment along with the car. 16-inch alloy wheels, a heated and electrically adjustable outside mirror, remote entry system, cruise control, electric steering column, dual air conditioning, electric passenger and driver's seat, front and side airbags, leather upholstery, headlamp cleaners and an electric sunroof.
And if the car's in a rather good mood, it'll make you a cup of tea and do the ironing for you as well. So it's packed with equipment, but what's it like to drive? Under the bonnet you get a 3-litre straight 6 that feels very torquey thanks to the variable valve timing. And it's as quiet as anything, you can hardly hear it. The engine feels smooth and powerful every time you accelerate whatever gear you're in, and switch the 5-speed automatic gearbox into sports mode and you'll get up to 60 in a very respectable 8.5 seconds. The top speed is 143 miles per hour. Just perfect for those quick getaways.
Now this is another one of those Japanese cars that has been tweaked to appeal to the European driver. The Lexus engineers spent months testing the car out on British roads. The changes they made to the suspension as a result give positive handling and good grip and control at corners. It actually feels quite sporty behind the wheel. One feature on the GS300 is the vehicle stability control. Now this applies brakes to individual wheels if it feels that you're losing grip. It's a little bit of extra insurance and added peace of mind. So there are no complaints behind the wheel or with what you actually get for your money.